Malaysia, almost as a whole, Muslim. Not a single Muslim soldier landed there. West Africa, look at Nigeria. The bulk of the people of Nigeria are Muslims. Not a single Muslim soldier landed there. On the east coast, Zanzibar. Which Muslim armies invaded Zanzibar? Tanganyika, Tanzania, and further down to the southmost, the Muslims reached as far as Mozambique. Mozambique, some 500 years ago, was a Muslim possession. The Arab trader had gone there as far as Mozambique, and there was a Muslim governor of this area some 500 years ago, whose name was Musa bin Baik. And when the Portuguese, when they conquered this territory, they could not pronounce Musa bin Baik, so they said Mozambique. They changed the name, they perverted the name to Mozambique, maybe unintentionally, but they perverted the name. Like Gibraltar, it was Jabal Tariq, the Mount of Tariq. They couldn't say Jabal Tariq, so they said Gibraltar. So history tells us that the Muslims, whether in Spain or in Cyprus or in India or in the Far East, nowhere, I mean an individual Muslim might have, some ruler might have forced an individual here and an individual there, or a dozen here or a dozen there. But as a people as a whole, the Muslims have been meticulously following the Quranic injunction, like Rafiddin, there is no compulsion in religion. And in the history of early Islam, we find the same situation. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not force a single individual, whether Jew or Christian or pagan, to Islam by force. So Islam is today, even today, the history tells us that today Islam is spreading. There is a sword, but this sword is the sword of the intellect. In the West, in England, in America, in my own country, South Africa, where I come from, Islam is spreading among the Indian, the other Indian, who are majority of them are Hindus. The Indian Hindu is coming towards Islam. The Christian colored, a mixture between white and black, is coming towards Islam. The white man, Christian and Jew, is coming towards Islam. And we are a minority of a minority. We are, the Muslims of South Africa, are less than 2% of the population. What force can we exert except the force of the intellect, reason, logic, and the propagation, the tilawat al-Quran, the arguments from the Holy Quran? So the defense of Islam, the Muslims, no doubt, they had to defend themselves by arms. And this is something natural. Gibbon, the master historian, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, he says that every individual, every human being has a right to defend himself and his person and his possession, and to extend his hostilities to a reasonable amount of satisfaction and retaliation, which the early Muslims were forced to do. Then Thomas Carlyle, one of the greatest thinkers of the past century, he defends the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Islam and the Muslims. In 1840, this great thinker in England, he delivered a series of talks on heroes and hero worship, and among his hero as prophet he chose the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And regarding this charge of forcing Islam down people's throats, he says, the sword indeed, but where will you get your sword? He said, every new opinion at its beginning is precisely in the minority of one. There's only one man. It is one man against all men. That he take a sword and try to propagate with that will do little for him. He said, first you must get your sword. In other words, no sword was ever used by the Prophet of Islam or his successors to propagate the faith. May this dispel this myth once more again. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه huwa as-sami'ul basir. Sadaqallah, Sadaqallah Mawlana Azim. My dear brethren, I have read to you the first verse of Surah Bani Israel, which is the 17th chapter of the Holy Quran. You may refer to this in the Holy Quran I mentioned once before, published by the Islamic courts and affairs of your own city, Doha, Qatar, and this Quran is available from them. It's a translation, an encyclopedia of some 2,000 pages, which has a very comprehensive index. Now, in this index, you will find details of the Mi'raj under M, or if somebody tells you that this is in the Surah Bani Israel, you look under B, Bani Israel, and it will tell you that Bani Israel is chapter 17, and you can very, very readily, very easily check up and read for yourselves with the commentary that is given in it. Now, in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this event which took place in the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Mi'raj, meaning the Ascension, in which the Holy Prophet Muhammad was taken, according to the majority of the commentators, with whom I agree, that physically he was transported from the Masjid al-Haram, that is the Masjid at Makkah, the Holy Mosque, the sacred mosque in Makkah. From there he was transported to the farthest mosque, which was in Baytul Muqaddis, that is Jerusalem, and from there he was transported into the spiritual realms physically. Now, the difficulty with many Muslims about Mi'raj is whether it was spiritual or whether it was physical. No doubt, in Islamic tradition, we read of a number of experiences that our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam he had in what is called Asra, or being taken up, Isra, Mi'raj. But this one in particular, the commentators say that it was physical. Now, what is the difficulty? The difficulty is, for modern man, he says, now how can anybody be taken out into outer space and into the great beyonds? Because we know that as we go higher and higher, there is lack of oxygen and freezing. One would freeze to death. If we go to a place like, let's say, the moon, they say on the sunny side of the moon, where we see the brightness, where the sun is shining, it is so hot that the humankind, his body, his blood will boil in 2 minutes. On the shaded side, he will freeze in the same amount of time. So how can anybody be taken out of this environment into another environment and be brought back safe and sound? Well, giving some little thought to this, I find that there are so many things which to the layman is impossible to comprehend. For example, our own movement on earth. We are told by learned men, men of science, geographers, astronomers, that we are at the present moment, I myself included, while seated here so comfortably, am being rotated, that this earth is rotating, and we, all of us on it, are rotating at a speed of 1,000 miles an hour. The circumference of the earth being 24,000, and once in 24 hours we make one complete revolution. So we are traveling while seated comfortably at 1,000 miles an hour in one direction, rotation, 1,000 miles an hour. Everything is being taken for a ride, 1,000 miles an hour. But this is one movement. There is another secondary movement, that while the earth is rotating, the earth is going around the sun. And we are told that the speed at which it is moving around the sun in an elliptical orbit is 66,000 miles an hour, which goes round and round while rotating, going round and round the sun in 365 and a quarter day, 365 and a quarter, 66,000 miles an hour.